Welcome to Brunel University London's Undergraduate Environmental Sciences webinar, and thank you for joining us today. I'm John, a member of Brunel's marketing team. I hope you and your family are keeping safe and well during these times, and I would like to reassure you that we are operating as normal as possible at Brunel, albeit from a mostly virtual environment for the time being. So I'll shortly hand you over to our environmental sciences academic presenters. Today, we have Dr. Nicholas Worsfold, who is the Associate Dean and Senior Lecturer. And we have, as well in attendance, Dr. Joanna Bagniewska, a Senior Lecturer and Level Coordinator in the subject area. So they'll carry out a presentation today on studying the Undergraduate Environmental Sciences course at Brunel to give you a complete overview of this course. If you do have any questions after their presentation, please type them into the questions box and we'll answer them after the presentation. So without further ado, I'll now pass you on to our academics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to all of the participants and attendees for this webinar. Please feel free to use the chat function here as well. While we're speaking, we're quite used to fielding questions and do introduce yourself, so put your name in and say hello so we can know who we're talking to. Welcome to Brunel, and thank you for your interest in the BSc Environmental Sciences programme. We're going to give you a short presentation just to give you a quick overview about the programme, but really we're here to answer your questions, so please do get engaged and don't feel inhibited to stop us and to ask us any questions that you might like to as we're presenting. So one of the key questions we need to address, first of all, it's a bit of an elephant in the room with this subject area. What is environmental science? And particularly for those of you coming from school or college, it can be difficult sometimes to think what would be the right set of qualifications and background and expertise in order to take this programme, and what might you need. So I guess the first thing for us to say is don't worry if you feel that you've got a broad interest in the natural world and in particular the way people are changing it. There's effectively a collection of different academic disciplines, traditional academic disciplines, that feed into the broad subject of environmental science. And throughout your 3 years with us, we will be certainly introducing you to those, particularly the biology, geography and chemistry. But we'll also be looking at taking those particular academic disciplines and situating them within the natural environment and within the changes that we're seeing, and then hopefully generating some of the solutions for the environmental challenges we're going to be facing over the next 50 to 100 years. So environmental science is in a way almost defined by its multidisciplinary approach to solving applied real-world problems. Who will teach me? Go on, Joanna, please.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to jump in right now. So this interdisciplinary approach is very much reflected by our staff who come from a lot of different disciplines. So this is our team. Environmental science is a brand new division. We were part of biosciences until last summer, but the team is tried and tested. We've been together for quite a few years, and so it comprises of geographers, chemists, zoologists, ecologists. So all of these people will teach you. Actually, starting from the end, we've got Ed Rutledge, who is the head of division. Then we've got people who will be teaching you in the first year are myself. So I'm the lead for the whole level, the level coordinator, as well as Tom Miller, the picture right below me, and Nick, who's presenting here with me, and then Rakesh, who will teach you environmental chemistry in the second year, and the second year is coordinated by Alice Baines. You will also have a number of different subjects, and we'll go into the details soon. The third year is coordinated by Ariana Zika, and you'll meet a lot of new staff members there. And also, of course, you'll get to know their research disciplines and potentially choose a final year project with one of these staff members.
Yeah, so if you asked all of these staff members to describe their academic background, if you said, what do you do, what are you? Some of them would say I'm an environmental chemist, some would say I'm a biologist working on the interaction between pollution and fish. Some might say I'm a medic who's now an epidemiologist looking at the effect of atmospheric pollution on human health. So it's a very broad academic collection of disciplines that we all come together. And what that means is we need to be able to be specialists in our own area, but also have enough knowledge and understanding of other areas to be able to have those interesting conversations at the interface of those disciplines, which is where lots of the real big applied environmental challenges of the future will be. So with that in mind, what's the curriculum? What sort of subjects will you learn? Largely, it's, the degree has been designed to introduce you to the natural environment, to then in the second year start to really focus on the concept of the Anthropocene, this idea that people have changed the natural environment to such an extent that even if all people were to be wiped from the face of the earth tomorrow, future civilizations, or aliens for that matter, would still be able to detect the age of people, the Anthropocene. We've changed so much about the earth that those changes are now indelibly etched into the geology of earth itself. And then in the third year, looking to the solutions. How can we understand concepts like sustainable development? How can we develop our knowledge of environmental governance? And how can we find solutions, whether that be for pollution, that might be looking at public health, or that might be looking at nature-based climate solutions and trying to explore, on the basis of the natural world and the changes that people have made to it, what's next? How can we make sure that we've got that knowledge and understanding of the way in which we can have a positive effect on the environment? So here is the map of our curriculum. Note that subjects here are sometimes changing. Academics will sometimes initiate new modules based on their research areas, and that might mean we sometimes do withdraw some of what you can see from the curriculum. So please ask at the time of your application for the definitive list. I'll hand over to Joanna to talk about level 1, which is the level that she coordinates.
Yes, so in the first year, you will have in each term 2 very much taught modules, which would be biological processes and earth system science in the first term. So you'll learn about the very basic building blocks of life, and as well what is out there on Earth and how it all functions together. In the second term, you'll move on to environmental chemistry and biosphere and ecology. Throughout the year, you will also do research skills and field work for the field course. And this is a theme that runs throughout the first 2 years. So this is to give you the opportunity to develop a scientist with the tools that are a bit more transferable. So it's anything from laboratory methods to data analysis, to collecting data in the field, to thinking about how experimental methods work, being able to design your own experiment, etc. You will also notice that both in the first and second year, you have case studies. And in the first year, that's natural environments case studies. In the second year, you have Anthropocene case studies. And this is to get you thinking about what you can observe around you in line with the themes that Nick described, how you can discuss it and how you can engage with it. Throughout the first 2 years, you also have leadership for sustainability, which gives you an opportunity to be a bit more creative with your skills as a future leader of environmental sciences.
Great, thank you. So at level 2, we move on to the Anthropocene themes, looking at the sustainability challenge, climate change, environmental pollution, and ecosystem stresses. We then keep building on your research skills and methods at level 2, and we often try to do as much project-based work as we can to help you to develop those core lab and field and desk-based research skills. Again, we have a case studies block that will be bringing together lots of the different strands from your taught modules in order to look at the real world applied problems that need those different bits of environmental science. And then again, a residential field trip. In the last year, we went to Tenerife, but we also offer a non-residential UK equivalent for those who can't be away for any block of time. And in the light blue colours are our module options. So in the second and third year, you can start to choose to specialise in particular areas. Joanna, over to you.
Yes, so something that I thought might be worth pointing out is that in your third year, a large chunk of your work will be the final year project, which is your own research project. And we try to prepare you for that in the first 2 years. So you start off with a mini project in the first year, where you get to learn some lab skills, data collection skills, and it's your first go at your own independent research. And that is then developed in the second year, which gives you a bit more independence. And then that makes sure that you are ready to do this bigger task of actually completing your dissertation.
Absolutely, and our final year project students have submitted their dissertations this afternoon. So 12 o'clock today was the deadline for that big project. It's worth it's worth a third of your final year, 40 credits. So that will be an opportunity for you to work alongside one of our academics in their lab or in their research group, becoming part of that research group. In the third year, we move on to the environmental solutions themes. And again, you get training in those core elements that all of our graduates will need. And then you get to specialise in the particular areas that you're most interested in. At the moment, those options are nature-based climate solutions, ecological public health, pollution solutions, and sustainable construction. I'll also just mention those placements. We'll come back to that in a minute, but we've got 2 different options for placement degrees, one of which is a traditional, what you might call a thick sandwich year, where you spend a year out in industry between years 2 and 3, but we also have a compressed placement option where you go to a placement in the summer between years 1 and 2, and then again between years 2 and 3, and you graduate with a placement degree, but within the 3-year time frame. So where will you learn? What sort of environments will you be in? Well, there will be some time spent in the classroom, although at the moment, of course, we're delivering all of our content online. And actually, whilst it's been very challenging for the last 12 months, this experience has given us opportunities to try new teaching styles and to ask ourselves questions about the best way to deliver that content. Of course, the library on campus will be hopefully a familiar place to all of our undergraduate students as well, making use of our hard copy and digital collections. We will be using GIS and doing some computer-based work in our computer labs to make sure you've got those skills to get you industry ready and able to take on your first graduate role in those core technical skills. And you'll also be doing some field work here in the caldera in Mount Teide in Tenerife, learning the geology about that area in situ, in location, is a fantastic experience. And certainly when I was an undergraduate student, I really valued that time away from campus and that deep immersion with the learning that a field course provides. And the way we tailor this field course, because it's such an interdisciplinary degree, here the students are in a quarry learning about the geology of the volcanic flows that contributed to the way that landscape looks. But we also do some marine biology. Here are some Atlantic spotted dolphins that we were fortunate enough to see off the coast. And then for those students who either can't or don't want to come on an international field course, we replicate those learning experiences more locally to London. So, for example, the reason for going on the trip to look at the Atlantic spotted dolphins was actually to talk about the fate of marine pollutants and the way they accumulate in the fat of marine mammals. So whilst we couldn't find dolphins around the coast of the UK, we can drive to the Essex coast and look at the same sorts of biological phenomena, but here we're looking at seal populations just off the coast of Harwich. We've also got a wide range of ecosystems close to campus that we can go on field visits and day trips. This is a restored former quarry. So this was a field trip looking at habitat restoration and looking at the way in which former industrial sites can be transformed. This is a wildlife trust site. And the picture on the left is just down the road from the campus, down the River Pin, and on the right, students doing some field work in our first year field course in Dorset.
And so it's lovely because we can just take students out to the river and they get to collect their own samples, which they then take to the lab on campus and analyse themselves.
Yeah, so where possible, we'll also make use of our specialist research facilities, particularly in things like environmental chemistry. Our undergraduate students are very fortunate to be able to come and experience those. Our microscopy, this is a photograph taken by one of my project students who was interested in the fate of microplastics in the aquatic environment. So here's a water flea, a Daphnia, and it's got stuck to a bit of the microplastics that it was exposed to in his experiment. So this was trying to test hypotheses about the fate of microplastics in the aquatic environment. And then again, some content will be delivered both on campus and online. So you can see some of these are lectures I'm giving online, and where we do things in the field, we tend to try to video that as much as possible, so that if the student wasn't able to attend that day, they'd still be able to benefit from the learning. So bottom left here is my colleague, Dr. Tom Miller, doing some aquatic sampling in the River Pin on campus. As Joanna said, we're fortunate to have some interesting habitats despite the fact we're in London. And that allows us to put those video clips on our intranet so that students can revise them and benefit from being able to do that in their own time after the teaching session has finished. So back to placements. As I mentioned, we do have these two different styles. We've got good relationships with the Environment Agency. So the students of ours who've done the compressed placement, the compressed sandwich year, if you like, have had success in gaining paid placements with the Environment Agency. One of our recent graduates, who was my project student, actually did the thin sandwich summer placement option, and he came and had a chat with me in September and said, actually, I've been offered a job by the Environment Agency. Is there any way that I could still study and work for them one day a week? So we managed to work out his project timetable with him working for the Environment Agency every Thursday. So he was able to give up his weekend job in the warehouse in Screwfix and work gaining professional training and skills with the Environment Agency, and of course a bit more money, while still completing the third year of his degree. So that's he's working for the Environment Agency now. That led on to a career for him. So those placements are a great way to get your foot in the door with some big employers and to gain lots of skills and experience in a real workplace. So finally, where might all this lead? Well, one thing I'd certainly recommend, and something I insist all of my first year students do in the first few weeks, is to look for some potential jobs. I've just put some websites up here: environment job, green jobs. These would be for people who want to stay within the sector. But from where you are right now, making choices about which degree you want to do and where, it's a really good time to look ahead and find some graduate roles and think, okay, in 3 or 4 years' time, will I be able to meet these competencies? Will I be able to apply for these jobs? And to think about, you might not want that in 3 years' time, you might completely change your mind. But that's a really good way to think about what's the right choice for you. Can you imagine yourself in 4 or 5 years doing those roles? Of course, lots of our students don't stay within the sector, and they take the training they've received in analysis, critical evaluation, GIS, data handling, and data analysis, and writing professional reports. They take all those skills and they move into other sectors, into business, into industry, into civil service. Some of our students stay in education and go on to master's degrees and PhDs. Some of us stay in education, but on the other side of the room, actually going into teacher training and developing their career in that direction. So because of its multidisciplinary nature, environmental science is a degree that is highly valued in the graduate marketplace as a STEM subject. Lots of the skills and competencies that you develop throughout your degree are very marketable in the current very difficult jobs market.
And because we're a very closely knit team, and the student numbers are very manageable, we get to know you very well. And that also means that we can help you if you have particular interests, if you want to be put in touch with maybe particular academics that we might know, or if you're interested in companies that we might have access to. We're there for you, and we're very, very keen to help.
Great, so thank you. That's all from the formal presentation for us, but we'd be very happy to take any questions that you might have now.
Thank you very much, Nick and Joanna. That was very, very informative. So yes, like Nick said, if you do have any questions, please type them into the questions box, or you're more than welcome to type them into the chat as well, and we will answer them here. So I do have a couple that have come in already to the questions box, and I'll read them out, and either of you can answer it, whoever feels best placed. So the first one is, could we find out a little bit more about the compressed placement?
Yeah, so the compressed placement is one of our placement options, and what would happen is if you wanted to do the compressed placement, we would start working alongside our professional development centre, the PDC, who do lots of training about how to get placement options. They'll do mock interviews, they'll help you with your applications. So that's really a triangular relationship between the academic team, the professional development centre, and the student who's looking for those placements. You'll then, if you're successful, you'll do a placement between June, July, August, September, in between the first and second year, and then the same again between the second and third year. So overall, you'll gain 8 months or about 30 weeks of professional experience, but that will not require you to take a year out between years 2 and 3. So we can't guarantee placements for those students, but we do all we can to work with our contacts to secure placements in the right places for you. So as I've said, we've had students doing placements like that in the Environment Agency. We've had some students who are interested in environmental education actually working at Brunel University in our outreach team, in our STEM centre. We've had students going to engineering companies for their placements as well. So we've got a good track record of managing to get people into the right placements that want them.
Thank you, Nick. I got another one here. Okay, here we go. So what do you look for in a Ucas application?
Okay, I'll chip in first, Joanna. Do feel free to interject if you want. When we read through your applications, we are looking for an interest in the discipline, first and foremost, an understanding of why it is you want to study this particular subject area. Now, because of the multidisciplinary nature of environmental science, our undergraduate students will come from a very wide, diverse background, intellectually and academically. So some students will have done A-levels in biology and chemistry and geography. Some might have only one of those. So we're looking for that demonstration of a fundamental interest, and that might not necessarily be just what you want to learn and study or what you've done in the past, but where you want to go in the future. We need to train people in these disciplines to go into a really diverse set of sectors. We're not looking to only train people who want to get a job in this field. We're really interested by students who might want to learn environmental science and then go into other fields, other sectors, other careers. So tell us who you are and what you've done, and tell us where you might want to go. And that really helps you to demonstrate your interest in the discipline.
And if I could add to that, one tip would be don't just write from the heart, write from the head. So it's nice to know that somebody wants to go into environmental sciences to save the world. I think that's an amazing thing to do, but we need a bit more. So we want to know what your intellectual curiosity is in academic terms. Why and how do you want to save the world exactly? And where do you envisage yourself doing that in a few years' time? So
yeah, we're not gonna hold you up to these. These are not promises you're making. We just want to see some thought has gone into a range of different directions that you might go into. We're not going to read it back to you in graduation and say, right, you said here that.
That would be fun, actually. I think.
Maybe we should.
Thank you both very much for that. Very interesting. Okay, so our next questions come in. It's what are some examples of placements that students have been on?
So about three or four of our students have been out at the Environment Agency recently. One of our students was at an engineering company based in Manchester, so he actually relocated for his placement for that year. We've had a student working with our STEM outreach team on campus. And let me think, I'm trying to think where. So within the Environment Agency, we've had students in lots of different, and we've also had students doing research placements, working in research labs. So we've had a couple of students doing placements with academics on campus, and we've had students doing research lab placements off campus as well. But within the Environment Agency, because it's such a big organisation with lots of different teams, we've had students placed within a multitude of the teams around the West London area.
Thanks very much, Nick. We got a question that you may have touched upon earlier, but it's worth asking it again just to, for people that may have missed the earlier session. So this is in regards to COVID. How much has the practical fieldwork been reduced as a result of COVID?
So we were very fortunate that we front-loaded all of our lab-based teaching into term one. So this year we were able to deliver, I think it was about 30 hours of lab-based teaching between September and December. So we were really fortunate that we had access to the lab for that period. So whilst all of our lab practicals teaching have been cancelled between Christmas and now, we actually only had a few of them left. So we got probably 4/5 of the lab-based teaching done earlier in the year. The field courses is something that Joanna and I would have been running in a few weeks' time. We should have been going to Tenerife to lead that field course in late April. Of course, we can't at the moment. So what we've done is we have designed a field course to be done wherever the students can be and wherever the law permits them to do their work. So students will be submitting their plans for field work. We'll be going through the risk assessment process with them and then getting those looked at by our health and safety specialists where necessary, so that wherever students can be, they will be doing their field work local to where they are, and then we'll be coming together virtually throughout the week to discuss each other's very different field-based experiences throughout the day and to make sure students are on track with their assessment. So this was a model that we designed last year during lockdown, and actually it led to some really interesting insights where it's very nice to go to Tenerife and see all the big, dramatic geology and the big dramatic species that we can see during that field course. But actually some students really enjoyed looking more local to them, learning about the species and environments that are within a short drive of their house. And because we've got students at the moment around the world, we've got students who are in lots of different countries because of COVID, sharing all of those experiences about what people have been doing throughout the day was actually very interesting, because we had 15 or 20 different types of locations that people had been at. So we kind of shared photographs and shared maps and shared the stories of what different people had been doing throughout the day. So hopefully next year we'll all be able to come back together again and engage in residential field courses both in the UK and overseas. But actually, I think what we've learned from this year is that we'll keep that very local field-based experience. And even if we don't need to do it because the situation with COVID is much better, I like it so much, actually, I want to incorporate that probably into the research skills and methods block somewhere else, almost as a training run for the residential field courses that hopefully we'll be able to do.
And on top of that, we were able to offer short day trips that were socially distant around, well, in fairly close proximity to the campus. So students who were rather local could join in on these if they chose to.
Yeah, so last August, September, when the regulations had relaxed enough for us to safely go somewhere socially distanced, we were able to meet at a particular location and people could get there via the train if they needed to. So we could have a couple of day trips in a socially distanced way. And actually from where we are in West London, we're quite close to the Chilterns. There is some fantastic ancient woodlands. There's some fantastic chalk grassland in the Chilterns. There are chalk streams. There's the River Pin right nearby. So actually from where we are, you know, only 15 miles from Charing Cross, we are also on the edge of some, you know, fantastic countryside in lowland England.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. Some really good examples there of how we've adjusted to COVID-19. And yes, echo those thoughts. As soon as we can get back, the better, but we certainly can cope working from a virtual environment for the time being. Now, a couple of questions from a person that's applied for the 3-year course to September. And just for security reasons, I never reveal the names of people who've asked questions, so we try and keep it anonymous. But it's 2 questions, but I think you can kind of answer it in one. So the first part of the question is, if I don't do a placement year, will I be at a disadvantage? And this is somebody who's just applied for the standard 3-year course. And they elaborate a little bit more on that question. They've asked, will employers look less favorably on me if I haven't done a placement?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing to say is the decisions you've taken in your application are not set in stone. If you come to see us during your first year and you say actually, or even during your second year and say actually I'd quite like to do a placement, we can make that change very quickly. Now, what you need to look at with a placement is the relative difference between you and the competition. So for some students, depending on their experiences when they arrive and what else is available to them, doing a placement is a great way to get that professional experience for that year. For other students, it can be beneficial to graduate as soon as you can within 3 years and then do something else, because effectively then at the end of the 4th year, which is when you should be comparing yourself to your contemporary who did a placement, you then might have equivalent experience or more. So it will really come down to the experiences and competencies you have when you arrive, the direction that you're going in and what sorts of things you want to do, what the demands are in terms of foot in the door, effectively levels of competencies and experience, and then looking at what other options would be available for you to get that level of experience. So for some people, doing a placement year gets them to where they want to be after 4 years. For someone else, perhaps, you know, looking towards a research career, doing a 3-year undergrad degree and then a master's might make them more competitive for a PhD position than someone who's done a placement. Whereas if you want to work in business or in local government, having a year's experience of doing that would probably be more valuable than, you know, spending that year doing something else. So it's about getting the right fit between the student and their expertise and experiences and where they want to be, and the placement, if that's the most appropriate thing. But for some students it's not, and actually graduating in 3 years and then moving on can be just as good.
Thanks, Nick. And also just to kind of elaborate a little bit on that, the environmental sciences undergraduate degrees are flexible. So if somebody who started the standard 3-year course, is it a couple of months or a couple of weeks into the course, they can perhaps bring in a placement year if they wanted to?
A couple of months. So if you wanted to do the thin sandwich option where you spend 4 months out after your first year, that would mean you'd have to act a bit quicker. But there's no reason why, if you want to register on the 3-year degree and then come and have a chat to us, go and talk to the Professional Development Centre, think about particular placement options. If you then wanted to change your degree to the thin sandwich placement year, then sometime after Christmas would be absolutely fine to make that switch. And if you wanted to do the thick sandwich year, where you go out between year 2 and year 3, then actually probably, you know, having those conversations at the end of the first year, beginning of the second year, would be about the right time, because that would still then give you 6 months to engage with the Professional Development Centre, go through that training process and be competitive for getting that longer placement.
And within the first few months of your degree, you'll get to know your colleagues from the years above you who have gone on placements, and so you'll be able to find out what their experiences were and whether they'd recommend following their path, and it just gives you a broader range of options to choose from.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have one more question here. What are the differences between the BSc and MSCI courses?
So the MSCI, or we kind of call it the Msci, is a 4-year program, and the last of those years is a longer research project. So with that, you wouldn't graduate after 3 years with the BSc. It's a 4-year master's program. So that would be the same as the first 3 years, but then in year 4, you would do an extended project with a member of our academic staff, ordinarily in their research lab or within their research group. There'd be some additional training in things like advanced statistics and research methods, particularly depending on the nature of the work you were doing. That would be tailored towards the sort of project you were going to do. And then there'd be a long extended project, normally between January and May, that you'd be doing a single project without any other talk component. Again, if in doubt, there's no reason why you couldn't apply for one and then move to the other at the appropriate time.
Okay, so I believe that concludes our show. I can't see any more questions, so I think you've covered all the bases very well, Nick and Joanna, so thanks for that. Any concluding remarks you want to offer to our audience?
Yes, for those of you who have already applied, I very much hope we see you in September. We're looking forward to it.
Yes, and thank you all for coming.
Excellent, very positive words to end on, and I will second that. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.